Hi, everyone. Okay, on this episode, we are going to be working on using that authentication we kind of set up to start securing some of the back end and securing some of the calls that we have. So in this case, as you can see, I've done a whole bunch of changes to the UI here. So now it's going to start looking a little bit more like what perhaps some kind of social media site would look like. So in this case, on the left here, we have the profile. We're going to have a profile. In the middle, we're going to have posts. And on the right, we're going to have like alerts and a search. At the top, we have our home, log out, log in. Currently, logout functionality is not working. So I went ahead and did a bunch of things off camera. So let's just take a quick look. The one thing I do want to note is that the only real big change, it was mostly CSS work. I did switch up some of the components, how they looked. In the nav menu, added a login or out. I won't go over that too much. Actually, while we're here, if you're authorized, you have the option to log out. If you're logged in, or if you are authorized, you have the option to log out. If you're not, then you're going to be presented with a login. And those will route you to the pages currently. And the current pages we have, log out, nothing. Login does have that same thing. So let's actually take a look at one thing I do want you guys to know is if you see here, a nav menu, if you drop this down, this is how you can attach CSS directly to a Razor component here. You'll do a create navmenu.razor and then do a .css, and then this will be attached to this component here. So you can have CSS per each component that you create. So that will help you kind of organize and do things that you are specific to your component, making it a little bit better to move some things around. Okay, so real quick though, let's just take a look one more time at the UI here. Just because I want to show that, okay, so login currently, let's go look. It wants you to log out because we have this auth token, right? So what we're going to want to do is we are going to want to leverage this auth token, right? To say, hey, I want to be able to grab, let's say, posts or the profile. Let's say I want to grab my profile. So the way we're going to be able to talk to the database and grab specific information is we're going to grab stuff that is encoded in this auth token here. So for the profile, let's work on that. I think we're going to go over building a profile. And what we're going to do now is let's just add the ability to create one in the database, because this is just displaying information. We're going to separate out the functionality of the app from just being an application user. We don't really want to be passing around an application user DTO. That was an example at the first. We want to be passing around probably a profile DTO. We don't want application user like your email and things being passed out. We don't need that to be passed around. So let's keep this here. We might end up using this, I don't know when, but let's just do an add new item and let's do profile DTO. So we got to create one of those. And then we're going to do, let's just throw public class on there right now before I forget. And then let's go to entities, and now we're gonna go over a lot in this video. I'm gonna try and break it out, I think. So this one is going to be just for the specifics of, let's create a new entity for the profile. So we're going to add new item, profile, and we're going to want to call this class profile, and I believe we are going to have a ID tag on this, or primary key, I believe. Let me look up a reference here just so I'm not going off the rails with my ideas here. Okay, I apologize. Key. So we're saying this is going to be a key. We're going to be using data annotations, and we're going to say that this is going to be public int ID. So if you've taken database classes, you'll see that there's a kind of an index value for your, any kind of entry will have a key. There needs to be a key to reference data to look it up. So in this case, we're going to reference the profile by saying, hey, every profile is going to have a column called ID. We're also going to have a foreign key because we want to say, all right, this is the primary key to look up the profile, but then the foreign key is actually going to be referencing application user ID. So we're going to be linking an application user to the profile by saying, okay, every application user is going to have a profile here. So we want to demonstrate that relationship here by saying application user. And because we're programming this, we're not designing the database out quite yet. We're going to build it kind of as we go. So that's why Entity Framework Core is pretty cool. So we can do this. We can say, all right, for now, we're going to just say each profile is going to have a single application user. And in this case, that's just the relationship we're going to go to is kind of a one-to-one here. And in this, we're going to have a display name. We're going to say, all right, each profile is going to have your display name. Let's have a biography. Let's say we're going to have a website. And let's also do an image, profile image. We're going to do something here that we're gonna get set up to profile image location, or in this case, profile image URL. Let's do this. And I will tell you why later on. And we're going to actually put in a date time created at. Or I like created on. Let's do created on. And we're going to do that here. And we can also set defaults as well. So we can just say every time you're going to create a profile, we're going to set that to .utc now. And UTC now UTC is very important to you. So let's say you're going to have users across the US. You want to have UTC. You don't want to use something very specific to your locale. You want to use UTC. And then on the front end, be able to set the display to mountain or central or Pacific. So that way you know that all your data is going to be stored in UTC. It should all be stored in UTC. Okay, so we've kind of built this profile out. So this entity we're going to be creating. Let's then look at doing the getting it added to application DB context. I'm just going to copy this down. Profile. Copy that. Profiles. We're going to have a table called profiles. And then we're going to go in the generic repository, not the generic repository. We're going to go into the unit of work where we're going to. And I'm hitting Control D here. I'm hitting Control D when you're not hovering over anything, and it will copy the line that you're on. And then you still have that Control V. So it's not copying over your clipboard, so I use that quite a bit. All right, so we have generic repository for application user. one for profile. And what we're going to do, I'm going to do Control D again. And I'm going to hit enter. So you can highlight and then Control D, and that will quick copy. I don't know the exact name, but this is why there's a lot of this here. So we're just saying, hey, if there's no context for profile, create one. Okay. Awesome. All right, so I believe that will take care of our .data stuff. Let's go take a look at because we did the profile DTO. Let's see what we can get out of let's see what we can get out of it. So the DTO is going to be a safe object to pass the front end user. So what we want to do is we want to do public string, have a username. As you'll see with the username and the display name, multiple users could possibly have, like, let's say in this case, your name, like you have. First name, last name could match someone else's, but your username, we want that to be unique and be able to reference a specific account. So that one, we are going to, I'll go over that in a future video. Okay, so let's do biography. We're going to say this is all going to be sent back, and we're going to do profile, image, URL. So this is kind of cleaned up because we're not passing back, as you can see, the DTO, this is safe information that we want to pass back, whereas the profile, we're not going to make reference to, okay, you have application user. This is why we need a DTO, is when you're passing information to the server and back to the client, or yeah, to and from, you want it to be whittled down to only what the user, the front end user, needs to see. So that's why we have our data transfer objects. Okay, so we have that set up. Let's do a migration. So what we're going to do is going to go to the package manager console. I think we have to be pointed at data, I believe. Okay, and what we're going to do is add -migration, and we're going to call this add profile. Okay. Build started, build succeeded. And now let's take a look here. So that succeeded. A migration was added. So if you look under the migrations folder, you will have a _add profile here, and you will be able to see. Okay, so once that migration is here, we've added the migration, but now we need to actually update the database with what we are doing. So it's creating, there's no altering of tables at this point. I believe it's just, we're creating a table. So when we do an update -database, this will apply that migration. Okay, so that applied it. So if we go and look in our local DB MSSQL, local DB, pull open FLP, go look at our tables, we should have a new profiles table. Awesome. So if we take a look here, you'll see those columns that we added, right? So if you see here, we can't enter information, but if we were to try and enter information here and actually run it, we'd be able to create a new row, and this would autofill because it is a key. So let's get out of here. Thank you. Okay. So now what we're going to do, we've added a new entity. Now we want to implement some functionality around that profile. So when you create an account, let's say when you register a new account. So if we go look here, if we go look into code or into the actual running site, so if you go and look under the login, let's say you need a new account, you're going to register here. Once you register, it needs to not only create what we've done so far, which is, I believe if we go look at our services, user account, under register, we're creating a new application user, but we also need to be able to create a new profile at the same time. It should be created at the same time you create a new user. And a profile can have, like in this case, let's say you have a profile for like a business or something like that. You could have multiple social media users that need to have access to that account. So that's in one case you would have multiple users attached to one profile or access to one profile. So that would be an instance of why you would probably have profile built out separate from application user, but separation of responsibility is also something to be concerned about too. So let's take a look at the code here. So when we register, let's say we succeeded. Let's say if we succeeded out here. So we created that account. We're also going to run within register. Let's take a look at possibly adding in code here. Let's create a new profile as well. Let's say that we are going to now have profile service actually. So this is where I want to stop and kind of think, okay, do I want to, under the user account service, this has everything to do with probably the application user. Let's instead probably create a new service that will just be handling profile related stuff. So let's add a new folder under services. Let's stop real quick so I can name things. Rename, let's call this profile. And remember our cycle of how we want to be doing things. So let's say the services in the client side and services in the server side. So let's create a service folder here called profile as well. And here we're going to kind of do something similar where we'll have profile service. And this will be our template. We're going to do public or interface. Sorry. We're going to do our public interface here. For now, we'll save that as is, and we'll do a new item. We'll call this the client profile service. And this will be where the client will enter into this kind of loop here for the service. So remember, we need the client to send an HTTP request. So let's go take a user account. And we're going to want to grab this because we want to build it out the same. It needs access to both HTTP client and JS runtime, and inherit from the profile service interface. Okay, now up here in the server side, we're going to do a new item. We're going to call this the server profile service. And one thing I forgot to note is to call this internal seal class, because we don't really need, we just need one protection over this. We don't really want our users to be able to get into this, so we're just going to throw internal sealed on here. And let's go up to internal sealed, and we want to also inherit from my profile service. Going to implement that interface. Okay, now the controller, remember. So the client profile service is going to send an HTTP request, and that HTTP request is going to be picked up by the controller. So we're going to add a new controller. We're going to call this profile controller. And again, once you've built out some of this stuff, it's going to be easier to go back and grab what you've done previously and put it in here. So if you can put a comma there and it'll remove an extra set of brackets, which is kind of nice. And then we're going to inherit from controller base, and then we're going to look at starting to add we're going to do another post request to create the profile. So instead of the register, right, we're going to take post action and we're going to call this create profile. So it's going to create profile. We're going to have a service. We're going to be using the iProfile service. And if you remember, if we're using this from services, we're going to call this profile service. So while we're here, okay, from services, iProfile service. Oh yeah, that's right. We also have to go into the program.cs and define that this is going to be a service we're going to use. So we're going to say iProfile service. We're going to say server profile service. Include that as well. This is going to start getting messy. We can also take a look at that. I'm not going to worry about that for now. Let's just include that. Okay. All right. And then let's come back down here as well and set this up to be a service here as well. So add profile service and client profile service. Cool. Okay. So back into the controller. We're going to say this profile service is going to say create profile. And because it's a post, we're going to take in probably a profile DTO. And let's call that, let's just say we have a DTO being sent over here. And maybe we want it just named a little bit better, actually. Let's just call it profile. And DTO. Because we need to differentiate between the DTO and the entity itself. So here, result, we're going to wait for this to create a profile. And we're going to pass in a profile DTO to create it based off of initial information entered. Because on that register page, maybe we should do more than just your username and password. Maybe we should ask for your name and things like that, just so that your profile can be built out just a little bit better instead of just having your email and having you have to enter it later on. But for now, let's try this. So we kind of have this template set up where we are going to create a service for a new entity. So we create a new entity. We need to create a service for it to handle, actions placed on it. Then we need to have a controller to handle API calls so that that action can be interpreted between the client and the server, what to do. So now that we're in the controller and we've said, okay, you're going to go to this endpoint, which is API/profile/create profile. Let's go and kind of clean up the client side here. So we need to say, I believe up here, oh, we didn't actually list out. We're going to call it create profile. So client profile service, we're going to have a public task, and we're going to return, let's not return anything. I think we need to. We're going to have public async task called create profile. And we want to take a profile DTO in DTO. And if I go look at the client account here, so what we're going to do is, that's right, status. We're going to communicate status of what's going on with the register. So I kind of want to separate out the user account service and the profile service. But at the end of the day, they are going to be a little tied together because they're going to want to register, create a new user, and then also create the program.cs or profile. Sorry. Getting a little mixed up because this is up here and it doesn't need to be. Let's close those down. Client. Okay. So here, create profile. So we're going to take the profile DTO and we are going to do a post request. So in the HTTP client, we are going to take a look at what we've done previously. We're going to do a post request. We're going to do post request, and we're also going to return the status. We're going to do the same thing as register. So we're going to have response, and we're going to await the HTTP client posted JSON async to profile API / profile / create profile. And we are going to hand it the profile DTO. Scan register maps, profile DTO. And we're going to return a status. If you remember the status, if we go to shared, that status is we're returning a code and a message here. So now let's go take a look here. The create profile, we're going to return that. And where we want to create this profile, if you remember, we have under components, under our pages, our register page, we have a handle valid register. It's going to try and create that new user. So it's going to register a new user. If the status code is not, it's going to return an error message. So in here, we're going to want to say that we have inject my profile service using, we're going to call this profile service. So profile service is then going to kick off after that has succeeded, and we're going to say profile service dot, and remember it's looking at the interface, and so far we've only coded this in the client. So we're going to go here and we're going to say, hey, you are anything that's inheriting this interface is going to be, it needs to have this function. Okay, so here now if we go back to the register page, profile service dot create profile. Now we don't have a profile DTO. So this is where we can kind of think about where we want to put this. Because if we're creating the user, we have some things in the profile DTO that we need, which are the username more specifically. And that, if you remember in the register, so if we go look at the server user account, the username is also the email cut off at the @ symbol. So whatever you're doing up to the @ symbol is going to be your username initially. So what we're going to do is we want to be able to know where, or that information specifically. So I'm actually thinking that having a service passed into here as well, the profile service, could be a useful thing instead of having to go back out to the register page. Yeah. So instead of having the create account be an HTTP request, I think we should do the create account. I think we should still use it as an API request here, but we can also just say, because we're in the server side, if you remember, And because we can just say I profile service, and we can call this my profile, So we're going to say, okay, you also are going to be using the profile service. We're going to take the profile service, and during the register, if it succeeds, registration was successful before it returns. Let's also do a profile service dot create profile. And before we do the DTO, we're going to say RP equals profile. And remember, we're in the server. We need to make sure we're creating the correct profile. We're not creating a DTO because we're on the server side. We want to be creating that entity here. We want that. And it's kind of throwing a fit with, maybe if I just keep going. So we're going to say new profile. Maybe we can help it out with saying flp.data.profile.entities. Does that help you? Okay, cool. It does. So we can say, okay, you're going to be creating a profile, new profile. We're going to have the username. So, okay. Actually, I think it does belong here because then we can just say the application user is going to be that new, equals that new user that we just created. And then we're going to say, okay, application user, let's get our display name equal to, and let's just for now say, we're also going to call it the user.username. You're going to match that for now. Let's do biography can be the nothing for now. Created on doesn't need to be set because we already have it being set as a default. ID we don't want to touch. Profile image URL we don't want to touch. Website we also don't want to touch here. So I think if we just set those two values, we can then pass this off to the create profile here. Profile DTO is needed. Let's actually forget about doing the profile service. I think we want a profile service to be able to update, but I think what is most important here, and you're going to see this, me kind of changing my mind after having wrote down what I want to do. We're going to just say unit of work. Let's pass in unit of work and just say, okay, you're actually going to write to profile. We're going to insert a new profile there. And if you remember, unit of work requires save. Okay, so we're just going to say you're going to just create a profile and link it to that application user immediately. Okay. But we did kind of build out the profile service. That was the important bit. For now, let's go and see if this functionality will work currently. So let's put a breakpoint here. And let's hope that application user is being built correctly. Services.profile. And remember, we got to implement that interface. I'm thinking we're not going to have, we'll leave it here for now. We'll just leave the create profile here for now. So let's start here. And let's see if we can get to our, we're not going to do that. So we're going to rely on the register. All right, is everyone happy? Okay. All right, now let's try this. All right. So let's say we want to do a login. We want to register a new user and say, what guy at we're getting past our authorization. Okay, cool. So it created the user. It was successful in this case because it's not in here. Okay, so it's going to create a profile entity. And if you can see, we have an application user. What I'm interested in seeing, so it got the user. I do want to verify, though. One thing I was interested in verifying is application users do have an ID. Okay, so we got it. Awesome. And saved. And registration successful. It takes you to the login. We go, what? And log in with that user. Bad request. And I know why. It's because we're still requiring on the login, we're still requiring your email to be valid. Sorry about that. So if you go take a look here, this is with that code I gave you, email confirmed. We set that to true. Let's go take a look at profiles while we're here, though. So if we go look under profiles, view data, we do have one, and it's tied to, we have the display name and the application user ID. Awesome. And we have created on, which was that default value. It's always going to be set to datetime.now. So whenever that is initialized, so in this case, when we're creating that new profile, that is being set. So let's go take a look at what we're going to do next. So we have that functionality figured out. We want it creating a profile at the same time as creating a new user. And we have I believe, an auth token here. Okay. So we need to figure out how we're doing our login and logout. Because right now we don't have any logout functionality. So we need to figure that out. So let's finish up with our profile, and then on the next episode we'll figure out the logout functionality here. Okay, so with the login, we're gonna try logging in as that account we just created. Okay, take us back to the home page, and what we're hoping to happen is a profile picture will load, your profile name will display, your user, your will display, your friends will display, and a description or your biography will display. And you'll be able to hit this edit button and edit your profile. So for now, I'm going to edit or stop this video here. We went over a little bit about creating a new entity and using entity framework to kind of get that up and running. We went a little bit more over, we're going to create a service every time we want to handle a new entity or object in that sense. So we're going to stop this video here, and I will see you in the next one.